and it's entitled, But What Can I Do? We'll be looking at the lives of Moses, David, Saul, the disciples, and Peter. Main Bible characters that we have become acquainted with and that you say familiar with over the years we have studied the Bible. Before we do that, I want you to get on your devices and we're going to look at the definitions of these four words. Exact, precise, accurate, correct. Sounds like synonyms, don't they? Synonyms. Exact, precise, accurate, correct. What can I do? Has anyone found it? What is the meaning of exact? You can use a Google machine. Yes. Exact says precise, right? Oh, yes. Not approximated in any way. I like that. Not approximated in any way. I think I got that. I also got precise. All right, let us look at the word, the definition of precise. What does the Bible say? Your machine says, not the Bible. Careful about details. That is what I had as well. Exactness or inaccuracy or detail. How about accurate? Correct in all details. All right. How about correct? Free from error, in accordance with fact or truth. So we're going to be looking in this study along the lines of these definitions. And if you notice with these definitions, each of the words having the other word in them, you notice? Like they're intertwined. Mindful of that, intertwined. Now, on the flight deck of an aircraft, there's what you call an altimeter. An altimeter is a barometer. It measures pressure and differential pressure. Differential pressure is the pressure that the atmosphere exerts upon the earth, and it varies as you go up. So if you picture the earth as having water on it, the more you go up, less water you have. The lower to the surface, the more water you have, so more pressure. The less you go up, less water you have, less of the pressure. And that's how the atmosphere operates. It's fluid in that way. And what the altimeter does as a barometer, it measures the differential pressure and it translates it into feet, the vertical displacement from the Earth's surface. But what the altimeter does is that it measures not from the airdrome elevation or the airport elevation or the land elevation, it measures from sea level. So if the elevation on which you live is 104 feet above sea level, the altimeter will read 104 feet. So you find that as an aircraft climbs, it shows the differential in pressure as you go up. I know the pressure gets very, very, very light up there, and that's why you have what you call cabin altitude or cabin pressure in the aircraft. And what that does, the system does, what the pilots ensure is that when you are climbing, they set the cabin pressure to the altitude. So when you are breathing, you will feel the pressure on the surface of the earth, and there's no problem with that. If you find that that fails, then what happens in the cabin is decompression. And then you find the real pressure up there and you find oxygen marks just start dropping off. So even though we are flying and we feel nothing at all as we climb from 15 to 25 to 30,000 to 40,000 feet, and you can still breathe, what is happening behind the scenes is a pressure differential working as the altimeter reads out. Now, the International Civil Aviation Organization has put in rules as aircrafts fly at that level, various stipulations. Aircraft flying to the east will fly at odd levels. Aircraft flying to the west will fly at even levels. But as you reach 29,000 feet, you find that the altitude, the vertical displacement from sea level has to change now to flight levels. And the increase of the separation, vertical separation minimum moves from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet. Reason being is that up here at 29,000 feet, the rarity of the pressure or the rarity of the atmosphere up there will not allow the pilots to accurately calculate their height. And because of that, the Civil Aviation Organization has mandated that the separation minima increase not by 1,000 feet, but by 2,000 feet. So you find that if an aircraft is flying at 29,000 feet, he no longer is referring to altitude but flight levels, because you must remember at sea level, various places have various elevations. Mexico is very high. And to ensure terrain clearance, they have to put a specified buffer on it, hence flight levels. Added to that is the fact that the barometer, the altimeter which translates to feet, is not as accurate at above 29,000 feet. So the next westbound level from 28,000 feet is 31,000 feet, because above him is that one going at eastbound at 29,000 feet. So in order to make up for the accuracy of the barometer, they put a space in it so that navigation can be precise. On 10th of September 1976, over Yugoslavian airspace, there are three sectors. Sharon controls the lower sector, which goes from 0 to 25,000 feet. Collis controls the middle sector, which goes from 25 to 31,000 feet. And Pamela controls the upper sector, which goes from 31 to unlimited. Now, within those category of sectors, within the area control, you have aircraft of different operating performances. And on that day in question, an Yugoslavian airline and a British Airways airline were transiting the area. The Yugoslavian airline was feeling turbulence, very rough turbulence at 28,000 feet. 28,000 feet means flying to the west, right? The hemispheric rule, it's going west. The British Airways aircraft was at 33,000 feet. And the altimeter was quite precise. It measured the exact level or displacement from the Earth. The Yugoslavian altimeter was going up and down, because if you are in an aircraft that is turbulent, you'll find the aircraft is moving like that and you find very uncomfortable. So he radioed to the air traffic controllers. And because he was at 28,000 feet, he was in the middle sector controlled by Collis. Within the aircraft, in that airspace, you have radar control. Radar control operates by squawks. Squawk gives you the speed, the direction, and the vertical displacement or the flight level of the aircraft. It's a positive and a unique identifier. So when you put in that squawk code, you can identify that this is British Airways 476 flying at 435 miles per hour at flight level 330, going eastwards. The squawk of the Yugoslavian aircraft at 28,000 feet, flying at 429 miles per hour at flight level 280, going west to his destination. Now, for Sharon to hand over, or for Collis to hand over that aircraft, who wants to go up to not 31 now, but 35,000 feet, he has to reassign a squawk, because the squawk in Pamela's section is much different than the squawk in Collis's section. And as the aircraft begins to experience rough turbulence, the pilot was desperate to get out at 28,000 feet and get the climb up to 35, where the air is a little bit smoother. So he radioed in, put in the power, and put his nose up, requesting the clearance to move from 20 to 35. Remember that British Airways at 33. So the controller says, all right, Collis, pass the strip to Pamela. So Pamela, I have a strip here that this aircraft needs 35,000. Can you approve it? And Pamela said, wait until this British Airways pass and then I'll approve it. He asked British Airways the position. British Airways told him, and he's exactly at 33,000. Because the Yugoslavian aircraft, the people were at risk, the controller, Collis, said, all right, climb 350 and change your squawk when you're in contact with upper control on so and so and so. So the pilot gladly put his nose up and put in the power. And while Collis was handing over the strip, Pamela was quite busy because at that level, you have 777, 747 going. And Pamela was not mindful of Collis's aircraft climbing. And they were exact. What happened was that as the aircraft switched off the transformer from Collis's airspace and moving up to Pamela, all they could see, the upper controller could see, was a blip. It didn't have the positive identifier. Because if the positive identifier was there, they could have seen that aircraft moving from 295, 315. They could see the aircraft moving up. And then that controller could then tell that aircraft to stop right now. But just as I was moving to 325, 32,500, the blip came up as he was assigned a new squawk. And Pamela immediately got on the plane and said, stop your climb at 33,000. Stop it at 33,000. His altimeter was exact. And the pilot leveled off of 33, knowing that he was going to go to 35. He stopped his climb. He was precise. He stopped it at exactly 33,000. All of a sudden, the middle controller pointed to Pamela and said, isn't that the British Airways trident moving across, estimating so and so? He came and spoke to the British. What time are you estimating this position? The British pilot told him at a certain time. Right then and there, everybody took off their headsets. Because on the 10th of September, 1976, a Lufthansa aircraft flying at 29,000 feet says he saw a ball of fire. 178 people lost their lives. Instruments were exact. The instruments were precise. But was the situation a correct one? On the 27th of March, 1976, there was a bomb scare in an airport off the Tenerife Islands, 1977. So the controllers diverted all the aircraft to a smaller airdrome because a large airdrome, they had a bomb scare. So those aircraft were like 747s when they're flying. If you notice the Boeing 777, if you know aircraft type, you have the Airbus 380, the Airbus 340. Those are large, wide body aircraft. This airport handled commuter jets like the MD-70, like the Gulfstreams, executive type, smaller aircraft. So the airports were configured differently. It's like going into London City Airport, coming from London Heathrow or London Gatwick. Because of that now, the wingspans are wide. Aircrafts were parking all over the place because all of them were diverted. Pan Am was about to taxi, and the KLM was in a position on the taxiway where the Pan Am couldn't get past because the KLM was refueling. You must remember, you know, they have a lot of small commuter craft there. So what the controllers had to do, they had a main parallel taxiway that is parallel to the roadway, what they had to do, because he couldn't pass that wide body aircraft, that 747, because the Pan Am itself was a 747. He had to backtrack. In other words, go on the runway, taxi down the opposite way, turn around and take off. Right? So he told the aircraft to backtrack via taxi exit number 2 and go on the runway. KLM by that time was ready, stopped his refueling and was about to taxi. Got taxiing instructions from the ground control and taxied to the holding point. The controller, who was a tower controller, in this sector now you have the tower controller and the ground controller. The ground controller controls the aircraft movement and the maneuvering area, taxiway, runways, parking lots, parking bays. The tower controller deals with the runway only. He does the aircraft taking off and an initial climb out and aircraft landing. The tower controller lined up the KLM. The tower controller coordinated with the ground controller because visibility was well low, almost zero. So he had to coordinate with the ground controller and he said, all right, where's the position of the Pan Am now? He said the Pan Am is entering the runway and will exit by taxiway number 1. So he has to go on the runway, backtrack, come off the runway to allow the KLM to go. The tower controller says, all right, I know where the Pan Am is. Could you put him on my frequency? Right, because he's on the ground frequency. Put him on the ground frequency. All right, so where are you? We are just 1 minute from the taxiway that I'm about to exit because the KLM is lined up and ready to go, engines running. The controller said, after the Pan Americans clears, no, he didn't say, you are cleared for takeoff after the Pan American clears. The KLM pilot heard, you are cleared for takeoff, and then the transmission clipped. So he just put in the power with 5 meters visibility. And that's what he heard, cleared for takeoff. And the Pan Am was just about to exit the runway when the pilots got a smashing blow for the white wing on the engine. 235 people lost their lives. All because the phrase, which was correct, but had the wrong order, did not give the precise instruction. In those 2 instances, brethren, you may wonder why, right? I have been an air traffic controller for over 25 years. So I am intimately involved in what it's all about. All right. So you find that many times when I just went into the field, they told me that the profession is a surgical one. You can't make any mistakes. If you notice, pilots flying for 15, 25 years still always go by a pre-flight and a takeoff checklist. These people should know it by the back of their hand, don't they? But they don't, because at all times they must be mindful of the importance and the significance of each activity. Controllers likewise. And because of that error, you find that people lost their lives. On a lighter note, on a personal situation, I have an example that I have here is my personal experience, which I found quite hilarious in the Sabbath school in Bur. Many people, why I'm so uptight about it. On my birth certificate, it has Glenn Alistair Gregory Augustus Boone, but it's spelled with 2 N's. All right. On one of my bank accounts, it has Glenn Gregory Alistair Augustus Boone. But my mother named me correctly Glenn with 1 N, Alistair Gregory Augustus Boone. No. When I was getting my citizenship in a British overseas territory, they said, Mr. Boone, what is your name? All the names are there. Right? All the names are there. But my mother had this name on my passport. Mr. Boone. All of those 3 names, can be three different persons. You have to get it correct. So I had to go and get a correctional spelling on my birth certificate. I had to go to the bank and show them my tax registration card and say, these are the orders of my name. Because I didn't know that all my names are spelled correctly. All of them are there. Why? What's the fuss? He said, that could be a different person. So I recognize the importance of order. What can I do? All these things I have done. What lack I yet? And because of that situation, I recognize that order was also important. Not only was the names spelled correctly and precise, but order had to be important, because if the instructions at the time on Tenerife Islands was after the Panam clears, you are cleared for takeoff, that order, lives would have been saved. You see how important it is? One problem in the area in justification by faith is that of man's capabilities. What is our potential? What are we able to do and what are we not able to do? Where is the beginning place in our experience? Can man obey the law and thus become righteous with striving, self-discipline, and strenuous effort and correctness of behavior, and produce a righteous life that God can accept and approve? Does God not command us to work and to strive? Righteousness has to do with God and his concepts of righteousness. Among the most righteous people of Christ's day, at least, are regarded by the general public, were the members of the Sanhedrin. They are the most elite. One of those men was Nicodemus, who went to visit Jesus by night. Let me ask a question. Why did Nicodemus go to Jesus by night? Any questions? Any answer? Why he didn't want to be seen, my sister? Because of his, oh, what? Let me ask you, what was his position? Yes, and he knew the law. He knew the inside and the outside of the law. So why go to Jesus? What lacked Nicodemus yet? For him, this man who was respected and going to the Sanhedrin, what did Nicodemus lack? Nicodemus had hope for a better state of things that the Messiah is coming. Yet the heart-searching message of John the Baptist had failed to work in him the conviction of sin over the period of time. But as Jesus came, he prided himself in his good works and the fact that he was a strict Pharisee, knew the thing exactly, knew precisely what God had required of him. When Nicodemus went to the service on Sabbath, he was at perfect peace and in total complacency. He was a liberal giver and secure in the pride of his own works. He felt he had gained the favor of God. There was nothing in his lifestyle to bother him. And sometimes we flatter ourselves with that. You know why? Let me tell you an example of mine. When I get a survey, I tend to write on the survey favorable things. You don't want to be honest. You don't want to put on the survey that you're a liar. No. Do you lie? Nobody will put. No, don't it? Sometimes tell some lie. You go to customs and you have 3 phones in the back. You have anything to declare? No. Lie, don't it? But you want to go through the phone, man. Go through. Eh? So, yeah. You wouldn't. you wouldn't put on it. So you find that we tend to flatter ourselves. And sometimes the flattery tends to remove that aspect of humility in our lives. And beloved friends, the righteousness that Nicodemus experienced is sometimes the righteousness that we experience. We may not be members of the Sanhedrin, but we have a knowledge of the truth. We can discern it quickly and easily. And because of that, we feel better than someone who can't easily do that. And sometimes those feelings are unconscious. We are esteemed leaders in the eyes of the people. If Nicodemus was alive now, he might be elected as the General Conference president. He was that influential. And they could have said, amen. We have elected the right man, but he came to Jesus by night. You know, they will be happy in electing Nicodemus as GC president because there will be nothing discernible about him that would seem to say that he was not ready for the position. It wouldn't easily be seen on the outside. Isaiah, another man who appeared very righteous and who felt like God had approved of him and was the gospel prophet. Isaiah felt approved of God, but when he saw Jesus, he said, "Woe is me, for I am undone, because I'm a man of unclean lips." Isaiah 65, 6 and verse 5. And knew himself to be a prophet of God. Therefore, he thought he was blessed of the Lord and spiritually safe. He was an apparently righteous man. He sees the purity of the Lord of the temple, but what it does, it brings the defect of his character, and he begins to sense that there is something wrong with him. And many times when we feel that way and we feel that there's a sense of something wrong with us, we tend to step back and go back. No, I don't want any position in this year. You know, I don't want any, I don't want, you know, I will go along with you. I don't want to be the head. I want to be, you know. So you find yourself not feeling as if because of this defecting character. And what you're doing is using your own criteria for what God wants you to do. We do it unconsciously. How little now appeared his wisdom and his talents as he looked upon the sacredness and the majesty of the sanctuary. His view of himself might be expressed in the language when Paul says in Romans, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death?" Moses was another man who see him, right? God had chosen him. Strong man, handsome man who could command, who could have such an excellent beginning. He was a fighter. He was a warrior. And God's people had to be delivered. But God says what? Go and look after some sheep. What was it in Moses why Moses couldn't take over at that particular time? Can anyone say? If you look back in the scriptures? Huh? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He was an angry man. Killing that Egyptian. But wasn't his anger justified? Because the people were under subjection and this was not a deliverer? Yeah, a righteous kill. Couldn't he have said that? But what was God seeing in him? Yeah. Moses realized that he could not use the techniques of a general when tending to sheep. When he got mad at the sheep, he realized that he could not afford to kill too many sheep. I would starve to death after a while. The sheep were his livelihood, his job. So he had to keep them alive and not kill them off. So God used that object lesson and said, go tend some sheep and see what I'm talking about. Because my people are sheep. Another great man in Israel was Saul, the king. You know that when many people are arguing, did God choose Saul? Or did the people choose Saul? Inspiration says that God chose him for the people, you know. And God inspired his mind. Remember, when Saul started out, you know, Saul was testifying of the goodness of God, you know. Saul was witnessing for Jesus. Saul was a man with his own eyes that see the vision and heard the voice of God as a prophet. Saul was preaching and prophesying. But Saul turned his back years later and eventually became the devil's spokesman. No, you know, all these examples tell me, you know, what can I do? That's the title of this morning's sermon. What? But what can I do? Remember that rich man? What was in Saul's heart? That new heart that he got that could cause him to do these things. Didn't Saul, a question that is very important and powerful, even in my life, didn't Glenn Booth know his own life, his own heart? Don't I know my own heart? Didn't Saul know his own heart? David, whom God called a man after his own heart. sent the man to the head? Is Uriah? Didn't David know that his heart had the potential to commit adultery? David didn't know that. But why still go ahead with all of that plan? Huh? Adultery, murder, cover up. Didn't David, who was a man after God's own heart, know his own heart? Beloved friends, there was something in David and something in Glenn Booth, who calls himself a righteous person, that brings on these problems. There is an inward corruption that tends to be innocuous, harmless, and because of that, it becomes insignificant. And sometimes because of this perceived insignificance, we tend to justify his existence. But David, remember we asked the question this morning in Sabbath school. Cain, not coming to the point of recognizing his sin, was continually in restlessness, which eventually led to the killing of his brother. And that was what led to the killing of, the attempt on David's life by the man who was chosen by God for the people. Saul. He asked of the Lord, when David recognized his thing now, and this was very different, create in me now a clean heart, because I recognize, as your prophet comes to me, as Nathan comes to me and speaks, I recognize the inward shortcomings, the inward frailties, the inward corruption. Corruption in righteous people. These are righteous people we're talking about. Nicodemus coming to Jesus by night. Why? He's the elite of the elite. And hear what Nicodemus said. He never come and ask Jesus a question. He came and said, well, I know that those teacher come from God. In other words, I know this thing. And Jesus never paid much attention to that. You know what Jesus said to him? What Jesus said to him in John 3. Nicodemus, you need to be born again. You tell the GC president that? Nicodemus, you need to be born again. When the disciples came, grant that my two sons may sit on the right hand and the other on the left. Jesus said, you don't know what you're asking. You do not know what ye ask. You want to be up there. Because in my mind, to be up there, I can do more work to down there. But my service starts from down there. That leads to up there. Remember that problem says, why? Come and sit up higher. You're not going to sit at the table, at the head of the table, because you might be embarrassed. You're going to sit at the bottom and God's going to bring you up. Do we know the contents of our hearts as righteous people? Jesus asked a question in Matthew 20 and verse 22. Someone can find that for me and read it. Matthew 20 and verse 22.
Jesus answered and said, you know not what you ask. Are you able to drink of the cup that I shall drink of, and baptize with the baptism that I am baptized with? They say unto him, we are able.
They said, Jesus, whatever you require us to do, we are able. Jesus was saying, you know, not what he asked, because you don't know the position of your heart yet. Because Peter, ye shall be offended because of me, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd and the sheep shall be scattered. Much of infirmity, unmortified sin, carelessness of spirit, unsanctified temper, heedlessness in entering temptation had been revealed in his experience. Christ's solemn warning was to call Peter to a point of heart searching. Peter needed to distrust himself and have a deeper faith in Christ, but he did not. The Savior saw in Peter a self-love that he could overbear even at the denial of Christ. And that's why he denied him. So Jesus knew Peter's heart. And the disciples says we are able. But Jesus knew the disciples' heart. And that's why he asked them, are you able to do it? Are you able to do it? Peter felt that he was distrusted and thought it cruel. He became offended. And because he felt this way, he became persistent and began to issue statements of more self-confidence. Though they may deny you, I, Peter, will never deny you. We must be careful about calling righteousness. We must be careful about adopting any attitude. This is taken from in Christ, right? Yes, lesson 10. So I just picked out some parts that I was sharing. That's why I said it's a Bible study we have it. The first in the kingdom are those who serve. They are the meek and the lowly ones. Jesus told them that they did not know what they were saying. They did not know what they were asking for and what was going to happen to them. They were not able. How little did they know their hearts? Righteousness. Hear what the righteousness is now, defined. The greatest of acts of righteousness was the death of Jesus on the cross. It is love, which is the fulfilling of the law. God is love, and his character is written down in that law. And the righteousness is obedience to that law. The sufferings of Christ on Calvary were the greatest acts of obedience. Put these sufferings together with the sacrifice of his life, and you get a totally different concept of righteousness. And the disciples were righteous because of the things they suffered for Christ, not the things that they did. I like that. But that they suffered. In other words, their righteousness was laid in the dust. And that's why when God says, when he wants to write the thing on our hearts, David was testified of it in Psalm 51. Create in me a clean heart. Because that is where righteousness has to be written. And Jesus said unto me, before the cock crow twice, you shall deny me thrice. Mark 14, 27 to 31 has that text. The Bible wants to highlight in the examples of Jesus or frailties. Many examples of them we find in the examples that we have just given, and others as well. Because time will not allow, I can't go into any more. The Lord, in his divine grace, tries not to expose our hypocrisy. He comes to you one-to-one. He wouldn't bring it up here on the pulpit. He tries to reveal to our innermost soul the corruption that is there. And that's why he asked the disciples, you know what you asked? Peter, you will deny me. Talking to Peter one-on-one. Because Peter, you don't know yet the content of the heart. Some of them learned the situation by the revelation of God to their soul. Some of us, and some of them never did learn. Not because the Lord doesn't try, but we don't want self to be exposed. But self is just going to be exposed to the frailty, the power of the Holy Spirit. Not to be exposed for embarrassment, but to the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's why God says, when you pray, you go in your closet. You know, it's an object lesson. He's saying, go on top of one-on-one talk. Desire of Ages, page 603 says, when Peter said he would follow his Lord to prison and to death, he meant it, every word of it, but he did not know himself. He was precise. He was exact in his behavior. Nicodemus was precise. And his accuracy knew no bound because he was of the elite of the elite. Precise, exact. But it was void of all correctness. of all truth and fact. It didn't have the essential ingredients in it. So even though the life looked like that of a Christian, being precise and exact, even though the altimeter was precise and exact, because it was not the correct position for the aircraft to be in, disaster struck. Because the condition of our hearts is not at the correct place it ought to be, death can reign in our hearts, in righteous people. Hidden in his heart, Desire of Ages 673, were elements of evil that circumstances would bring to life and fan to life. Have you ever noticed that how everything can be going along fine in your life, and then when the wrong set of circumstances come about, your life simply collapses? I'm not coming back to church. Brethren, let me say in the Jamaican parlance, the whole of them are hypocrites. In other words, all of them are hypocrites. They're not behaving like. So in what you're doing in your heart now, is justifying your position to step out because they are no longer. Whereas if the Holy Spirit will tell you, just as in Moses, go and tend some sheep. In other words, you're going to have to learn now the ministry of forgiveness and healing. So even though you were offended, you have to be proactive in reconciliation. Do we know the contents of our heart? Unless he was made conscious of his danger, these would prove that it would lead to his eternal ruin. The Savior saw in him a self-love and assurance that would overbear, go over his love for Christ, supersede, replace. Imagine that. The man who meant every word he said. What did Peter need to do? Peter needed to distrust himself. Peter felt that if he was distrusted, he thought it cruel. Peter became more self-confident. Peter needed to be converted, and that conversion should start with Matthew 18 and verse 3. Who has that verse? Matthew 18 and verse 3. Could you find that one for me? Yes, Sister Dottie.
Except he be converted,
Yeah,
and become as a little children, he shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Except he be converted and has become as what? Little children. What do little children do? Mommy, I can't do this. Daddy, I can't do this. Can you help me? Can you show me how? That's how children operate. Mommy, I'm talking about a situation that they are unfamiliar with now. I can't do this. Show me. Except ye be converted and become as little children. Lord, show me how. Lord, teach me how. Lord, teach me thy way. Somehow we feel safe when we can always prove that we are right. But we must be careful about adopting any attitude that would make us first in the kingdom of heaven. Christ, our righteousness, teaches that I live by faith in the rightness and the righteousness of another, and not by faith in myself. In my self-confidence, what I'm establishing is that I do not have faith in his righteousness. We might claim that we are believers in Christ as our righteousness. Paul spoke about it. Those who go about establishing their own righteousness, being ignorant of God's righteousness, as soon as you try to make yourself righteous, you are ignorant of this. In establishing your own righteousness, you are ignorant of the righteousness of Christ. Confidence in self and the righteousness of God are at variance. It's as like night and day. They as what they call it mutually exclusive. One exists at the expense of the other. Christ wants to work in and through us. Time for me to finish. A well-adjusted Christian does not get hung up because there's something wrong on the inside. There's nothing startling or terrible there. We are human beings, and human beings are like us. The apostles and prophets were human beings, and to get to that higher place, they must now recognize where they are and says, Lord, create in me a clean heart. The section our study ends, it says that God is still that still small voice. He speaks to us like he did to Nicodemus and Moses and to David. See how delicately he pointed it out to them? He is very careful that he does not crush out any spark of hope we have as he points to our deficiencies. He's literally asking, why will you die in your sin, O ye righteous people? Why will you die when all those things, when I can take them away and make you like Jesus? Why do we go on and on perpetuating these problems? I believe with all my heart that the Lord in this very day wants to bridge all these credibility gaps. He wants to look into every heart, not just the young, but the old, everybody. He wants to look into the preacher's heart. He wants to look into the administrator's heart. He wants to look into the teacher's heart. He wants to show us our sham, our phoniness, our corruptions. He wants to show us how we have misled people. He wants to look into our parents' heart, but he doesn't want them to give up. He doesn't want them to commit suicide. He does not want them to go around blaming themselves. He wants us to turn to him and depend on him. Mommy, Daddy, show me how. For the strength and the righteousness we do not have in self. He has been waiting all these years to bless us with his power and his spirit, with his love and his righteousness. And we go on defending ourselves as though there was nothing wrong with us. Beloved friends, forget the voices of many humans who find fault and who excuse and justify self. We are accountable for one voice, the voice of God's Spirit. He's speaking to us as he did to Nicodemus, telling us we must be born again and have the blemishes and the cancers taken out of our lives. Unless we become new persons, little children, wholly dependent upon God, we cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. He wants us there, and that is why he died for us. Can someone find for me Ezekiel 20 and verse 43? And another person find for me Jeremiah 17 and verse 9. Ezekiel 20 and verse 43 is a verse that is really enlightening and illuminating. Ezekiel 20 and verse 43. What does it say? Yeah.
And they shall remember your ways and all your doings.
Yes.
Wherein you have been defiled, and you shall love yourselves in your own sight.
Yes.
For all your evils.
Yes.
That you have committed.
That is what Isaiah had experienced. Loathing yourself. Even though you're righteous, loathing yourself, because you recognize that in you there is evil. Don't trust yourself. In 1888, Christ our righteousness, the glad tidings says, when men see their own nothingness, they are prepared to be clothed in the righteousness of Christ. Let there be a dwelling upon humiliation, self-denial, meekness, and lowliness of Christ, that proud and selfish hearts may see the difference between themselves and the pattern and may be humbled. What is justification by faith? Is the work of God laying the glory of man in the dust and doing for man which is not in his power to do for himself. It may be a humiliating experience, but it is a sanctifying experience. You know why? Jeremiah 17 and verse 9. What does that say? I think that was a memory text for us some weeks ago. Yeah. And yes. Amen. Who can know it? Unless we become new persons and dependent on God, we cannot enter the kingdom. And God wants us there. That is why he died for us. He wants us to give him a new heart, to trust him, to lean on him. It doesn't matter how useless you think you are. He can make you mighty. He can bless you and even make you be like Jesus. He wants to say to you someday, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. May the Lord, by his sweet grace, somehow penetrate into our hearts this afternoon and minds and take away from us this defensiveness I call now, as I'm informed, of my filthiness, this defensiveness, and all this self-justification, that we may see what Christ is really trying to do for us. And as the writer says to close, this I will collaborate with him and identify with him in saying that this is my prayer for us all, myself included, in Jesus' name.
We thank the Lord for using the Glenn to be able to give us this timely reminder to be able to allow ourselves for him to do what it is